1,200 species had gathered to destroy one. Ambassador Diana Webb walked into the Grand Assembly Chamber without knowing she was about to witness the end of everything humanity had built among the stars. The massive circular room stretched upward for nearly a kilometer, filled with floating platforms where representatives of every known civilization waited in silence. Normally, the chamber buzzed with translation chatter and political dealing. Today, it was quiet as a tomb. Diana had served as Earth's voice in the Galactic Compact for 19 years. She had negotiated trade deals, settled border disputes, and once talked two species out of a war that would have killed billions. She knew the rhythms of this place better than anyone, and right now, every instinct in her body screamed that something was terribly wrong. Director Oren, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected the chamber lights, stood at the central podium. His species, the Keithrani, had chaired the assembly for 3 centuries. He was usually warm toward Diana. Today, he would not meet her gaze. "This emergency session has been called," Oren announced, his voice carrying through the translation systems, "to address motion 7441, the proposal for immediate expulsion of Earth from the Galactic Compact." Diana felt the words hit her like physical blows. Expulsion. In the 4,000 years of the Compact's existence, no species had ever been expelled. Wars had been fought, sanctions had been imposed, but expulsion meant complete isolation. It meant being erased from galactic civilization. "On what grounds?" Diana demanded, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. High Speaker Ulamis rose from the Drethani platform. The reptilian diplomat had always disliked humans, but Diana had never understood why. His scales shifted from green to a deeper shade as he spoke. "Humanity represents an existential threat to galactic peace," Ulamis declared. "Your species expands without limit. You adapt to environments that should kill you. You consume resources at rates that dwarf species 10 times your population. And worst of all, you spread your culture like a virus. Our children sing your songs, our artists copy your styles, our young dream of being human." Diana almost laughed. "Almost. You want to exile us because your children like our music. We want to exile you because you are dangerous." Ulamis replied, "You are predators pretending to be friends. Your kindness is a weapon. Your generosity is a trap. Every species you help becomes dependent on you. And one day, when you decide to stop helping, they will have forgotten how to survive without you." The accusation was so absurd, so twisted, that Diana struggled to find words. She looked around the chamber at species humanity had aided countless times. The Melori, whose plague humanity had cured. The Orvani, whose dying star humanity had helped them escape. The Keithrani themselves, whose food crisis humanity had solved with agricultural technology. None of them spoke in her defense. "Let us vote," Oren said softly. One by one, the species cast their decisions. Diana watched the numbers climb on the central display. In favor, 100, then 300, then 500. The Melori abstained, the Orvani abstained, but not a single species voted against. The final count glowed in the air like a death sentence. In favor, 1,089. Abstaining, 157. Opposed, 0. "The motion passes," Oren announced. "Earth is hereby expelled from the Galactic Compact, effective immediately. All human citizens within Compact space must depart within 72 hours. All treaties are void. All trade agreements are canceled. All mutual defense pacts are dissolved." Diana stood alone on her platform as the chamber began to empty. Species that had shaken her hand yesterday now hurried past without looking at her. Allies she had trusted became strangers in seconds. Ulamis paused near her platform, his reptilian face unreadable. "You should have stayed on your little rock," he said. "You should have never reached for the stars." Diana looked at him for a long moment. She thought about anger. She thought about threats. She thought about promising revenge that humanity could certainly deliver if it chose. Instead, she simply nodded. "You will regret this," she said quietly. "Not because we will hurt you, we won't. You will regret this because one day you will desperately need help, and we will not be there, not because we refuse, but because you have placed a wall between us. Remember this moment when that day comes, High Speaker. Remember that you chose this." Ulamis snorted and walked away. Diana remained standing until the chamber was empty. Then she activated her communication device and connected to Earth, to the President, to the leaders who had trusted her to represent. Humanity among the stars. "It's done," she said. "They voted us out, all of them." President Sophia Reyes was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried no panic, no despair, only a calm determination that had defined her entire career. "Then we come home," Reyes said. "Every human, every ship, every station, we come home and we figure out what comes next." "They're afraid of us," Diana said. "They think we're monsters." "Then we prove them wrong," Reyes replied. "Not with words, not with war, with time, with patience, with being exactly who we've always been. Let them watch, let them see. And when the universe reminds them why they needed us, we will be ready." Diana looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. Home waited. And humanity, for the first time in 3 centuries, would face the galaxy alone. But Diana Webb had seen her species overcome worse. They had crawled out of caves, survived ice ages, rebuilt after wars, and reached the stars through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The galaxy thought it had defeated humanity today. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. 5 years of silence changed everything. Rena remembered the day the human ship stopped coming. She was a young trader then, barely old enough to pilot her family's cargo vessel through the busy lanes of compact space. Human freighters had been everywhere in those days, their crews friendly, their goods reliable, their prices fair. Then one morning they were simply gone. The Melori were small creatures, covered in soft brown fur, with large eyes built for seeing in the dim light of their forest homeworld. They were traders by nature, surviving through commerce rather than conquest, and they had depended on humanity more than they wanted to admit. Now Rena piloted her ship through the neutral zone, the 200 light-years of empty space that separated the human confederacy from the rest of the galaxy. What she was doing was illegal. The compact had forbidden all contact with the expelled species, but Rena had bills to pay and a family to feed, and human goods still fetched premium prices on the black market. Her ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a small human outpost. Within seconds, a message appeared on her screen. "Melori vessel, this is Outpost 7. State your business." Rena transmitted her trading credentials and waited. She expected suspicion, she expected hostility. After everything the compact had done, she would not have blamed them. Instead, the response came with warmth that surprised her. "Welcome back, Rena. Dock at Platform 3. We have fresh goods ready for you and the coffee is hot." Rena guided her ship toward the outpost, still marveling at how different humans were from their reputation. The galaxy painted them as dangerous predators, aggressive expansionists, cultural conquerors. But in 5 years of secret trading, Rena had only found kindness. She docked and walked into the outpost's main hall. A human woman with dark skin and gray-streaked hair waited for her with a smile. This was Captain Nina Okonkwo, the outpost commander. She had become something like a friend to Rena, though neither of them would admit it openly. "You look tired," Nina said, guiding Rena toward a small cafe area. "Long journey," Rena replied. "The patrols are getting tighter. The compact really does not want us talking to you." Nina poured 2 cups of coffee and slid one across the table. Rena had grown to love this human drink, bitter and warm and strangely comforting. "How are things out there?" Nina asked. "We only get fragments of news." Rena wrapped her small hands around the cup. "Not good. The Drethani raised tariffs on everyone. 3 species are fighting over a mining system you used to manage. The Orvani medical stations are struggling without your supplies." She paused. "Many species are starting to ask questions. They wonder if the vote was a mistake." Nina nodded slowly. "And what do you think?" "I think my people were cowards," Rena said quietly. "We abstained because we were afraid. We should have voted no. We should have been brave." Your people did what they thought was safe. I understand that. Rena shook her head. Safe is not the same as right. My grandmother taught me that. She said the Malori have survived for 10,000 years by being clever, but clever without courage is just cowardice with extra steps. Nina laughed, a genuine sound that echoed through the small space. Your grandmother sounds wise. She would have liked humans, Rena said. She always said to judge a species by how they treat those who cannot help them back. You have spent 5 years being kind to smugglers and outcasts. You owe us nothing, but you help anyway. Nina was quiet for a moment, then she leaned forward. Can I tell you a secret? Rena's ears perked up. 3 weeks ago, a compact science vessel crashed in the neutral zone. Engine failure. They were drifting, running out of air. We could have ignored them. They were not in our space. They were not our responsibility. What did you do? We rescued them, Nina said. 47 Orvani scientists. We fixed their ship, healed their wounded, gave them supplies for the journey home. We asked for nothing. We did not even give them our names. Rena stared at her. Why? Nina smiled sadly. Because that is who we are. President Reyes calls it the open-hand doctrine. Humanity will help anyone who asks, regardless of what they have done to us. Not because we are saints, not because we are stupid, but because the moment we become bitter, the moment we start keeping score, we lose something more important than any political victory. That sounds expensive, Rena said. It is, but some things matter more than cost. Rena finished her coffee and stood. She had cargo to collect and a long journey ahead, but something had shifted inside her. Some small seed had been planted. I will tell others, she said. I will tell them what you are really like, quietly, carefully, but I will tell them. Nina walked her back to the docking platform. Be safe out there, Rena, and remember, if you ever need help, truly need it, we will be here. Rena boarded her ship and flew back into the neutral zone, carrying human goods and something far more valuable. Stories, truths, small flames of understanding that would spread from ship to station to planet, burning away the lies one conversation at a time. She did not know it yet, but she was not alone. Across the galaxy, thousands of small rebellions were brewing, species that remembered human kindness, traders who knew the truth, scientists who had been saved, politicians who had started to doubt. The Compact had tried to erase humanity from galactic civilization. Instead, they had created a legend. The first warning came from a mining colony that no longer existed. Fleet Commander Pellax was reviewing supply reports when the distress signal arrived. Static-filled, broken, desperate. A Drethani mining station at the edge of known space was under attack. By the time Pellax assembled a response team, the signal had stopped. He sent 3 scout ships to investigate. Only one returned. The pilot was a young Drethani named Soreth, barely out of training. When he stumbled off his ship, his scales had turned completely white, a sign of absolute terror in their species. He could only speak one word before collapsing. Swarm. Pellax felt his blood turn cold. The Vorax swarm was supposed to be extinct, a species of hive-minded insectoid predators that had nearly consumed the galaxy 10,000 years ago before being pushed back into dark space and forgotten. Every civilization had stories about them. Every child had nightmares. And now they were back. Within 2 weeks, the Drethani Consortium lost 17 colonies. Within a month, their outer rim territories had gone silent. Billions of citizens simply gone, consumed. The swarm did not conquer. The swarm did not negotiate. The swarm fed. High Speaker Ulamis stood before the Grand Assembly and begged for help. We need every ship, every weapon, every soldier the Compact can spare, he said. His voice, once full of pride and confidence, now trembled with fear. The swarm does not distinguish between species. What happens to us today will happen to all of you tomorrow. The assembly debated, they argued, they formed committees. The swarm kept advancing. Pellax watched his fleet shrink with every battle. Drethani ships were not built for this kind of warfare. Their weapons barely scratched the swarm carriers. Their shields failed against the endless waves of drones. For every enemy they destroyed, 10 more appeared. He received word that the swarm had reached Drethan Prime's outer moons. Their homeworld would be next. And still, the compact sent only words of sympathy and promises of future aid. Far away, on the edge of the neutral zone, a human observation vessel watched everything. Captain Nina Okonkwo sat in her command chair and stared at the tactical display. Red dots representing swarm forces filled half the screen. Blue dots representing Drethani defenders grew fewer every hour. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, millions of innocent people waited to die. Her crew worked in silence. They had been ordered to observe only. The Drethani were compact species. The war was not humanity's concern. But Nina could not stop watching. "Captain," her communications officer said quietly, "I have monitored their distress frequencies. They are evacuating cities now. The shelters are full. People are dying in the streets because there is nowhere to run." Nina closed her eyes. She thought about the vote. She thought about being cast out. She thought about 5 years of isolation and insult. She thought about every reason she had to simply turn away. Then she thought about who she was, who her people were. "Open a channel to Earth," she ordered. "Priority 1 direct to the President." The connection took 3 minutes to establish. When President Sophia Reyes appeared on screen, she looked tired but alert. "Captain Okonkwo, I assume this is about the swarm." "Yes, Madam President. The Drethani are losing, badly. Their homeworld will fall within days if nothing changes. The compact is not sending meaningful help. They are." Nina paused, searching for the right words. "They are letting it happen." Reyes nodded slowly. "And what do you recommend?" "Permission to speak freely." "Always." Nina took a deep breath. "They voted us out. They called us monsters. They said we were a threat to peace. High Speaker Ulamis himself led the charge against us. He wanted us erased from galactic civilization." She paused. "And right now his people are dying and I want to help them anyway." The president was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "Why?" "Because that is who we are," Nina replied. "Because those are still people, children, families, beings who did nothing wrong except be born into a government that made terrible choices. And because if we stand by and watch them burn, we become exactly what Ulamis accused us of being." Reyes smiled. It was a sad smile, heavy with understanding. "I was hoping you would say that." She stood and straightened her jacket. Behind her, Nina could see advisors gathering, screens lighting up, the machinery of government shifting into motion. "I will address the Confederacy in 1 hour," Reyes said. "We will ask for volunteers. No one will be forced to fight for those who rejected us. But I suspect we will have more volunteers than ships to carry them. And if the compact objects, if they say we have no right to enter their space." Reyes laughed. It was a harsh sound full of bitter irony. "They threw us out. They made it very clear that their laws no longer apply to us. They cannot have it both ways. Either we are part of their civilization with rights and responsibilities, or we are free to act as we choose. They made us outsiders. Outsiders do not need permission." The connection ended. Nina turned to her crew. They were already preparing for battle, checking weapons, running diagnostics, ready to follow her into fire. "Signal all human vessels in the neutral zone," she ordered. "Tell them to prepare for deployment. Tell them we are going to war." "Against the swarm?" her first officer asked. "For the Drethani," Nina corrected. "We are going to save the people who cast us out, and we are going to make sure the whole galaxy sees us do it." 400 warships appeared from nowhere, and the galaxy held its breath. Fleet Commander Pellax had accepted death. His last 12 ships formed a thin line between the swarm and Drethan Prime's final evacuation transports. Millions of civilians huddled in those vessels, waiting for an escape that would never come. The swarm carriers were closing in, their drone bays already opening, ready to release the endless tide that had consumed everything else. Then space itself seemed to tear apart. Human ships exploded out of faster-than-light travel in a formation that defied every known tactical doctrine. They did not emerge at a safe distance. They did not wait to assess the battlefield. They dropped directly between the swarm and the Drethani, so close that Pelax could see their hull markings with basic sensors. Admiral Yuki Tanaka's voice filled every communication channel in the system. "This is the human Confederacy fleet. We are here to help. Point us at the enemy." Pelax could not speak. His translator could not find words in any language for what he was feeling. These were the people his government had expelled. These were the beings his species had called monsters, and they had come to die for Drethani children. "Human Admiral," he finally managed, "we did not call for your aid, we did not ask." "No," Tanaka replied. "You did not. We came anyway. Now, Fleet Commander, I suggest you move your ships to protect those transports while we deal with our new friends." Pelax ordered his remaining vessels to fall back. He watched as the human fleet surged forward directly into the heart of the swarm. What followed was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Human weapons tore through swarm carriers like they were made of paper. Beams of energy that Pelax had never seen before cut across space, leaving trails of destroyed drones in their wake. Human fighters, small and impossibly fast, weaved between enemy formations with movements that should have killed their pilots. But the swarm was endless. For every carrier that fell, 2 more arrived. For every drone destroyed, 100 replaced it. The humans advanced, gained ground, pushed the enemy back, and then the tide began to turn. Pelax watched a human destroyer take a direct hit and break apart. He watched fighters vanish in balls of fire. He watched the gap between human ships grow wider as more and more were lost. And still, they did not retreat. Lieutenant Paulo Costa was 23 years old. He had joined the Navy to see the stars, to explore, to have adventures. He had never expected to die defending a species that had voted to exile his own. But as his fighter squadron held a critical gap in the defensive line, preventing swarm drones from reaching the evacuation transports, he found that he did not regret it. 6 hours, his wing commander reported. "We have held for 6 hours. 2 million civilians have escaped because of us." Paulo looked at his damage readouts. His shields were gone. His weapons were nearly drained. His hull was held together by determination and not much else. "Another wave incoming," someone called. Paulo saw them, hundreds of drones pouring through the gap his squadron was supposed to hold. If they got through, they would reach the transports. The evacuation would end in screams. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about the sister he would never see get married. He thought about all the things he would miss. Then he pushed his throttle forward. His fighter accelerated toward the largest swarm carrier in the formation. His targeting computer screamed warnings that he ignored. His radio filled with voices begging him to pull back, to eject, to save himself. Paulo aimed for the carrier's central power core and did not slow down. The explosion was visible from Drethan Prime's surface. When the light faded, the carrier was gone, and so were the hundreds of drones it had been about to launch. The gap held, the transports escaped, 2 million lives purchased with one. The battle lasted 18 more hours. When it finally ended, 40% of the human fleet had been destroyed. 160 ships, thousands of lives, an entire generation of young pilots and engineers and soldiers gone. But Drethan Prime survived. Pelax stood in his command center and watched the swarm retreat. They were not destroyed, merely pushed back, but for now they were running. His planet still existed, his people still breathed. The communication screen lit up with Admiral Tanaka's face. She looked exhausted, covered in dust and dried blood from minor wounds, her uniform torn. Behind her, damage control crews worked frantically to keep her flagship alive. "Fleet Commander," she said, "the immediate threat is contained. We will maintain a defensive perimeter while you complete evacuations and reinforce your positions." Pelax stared at her. "Admiral, We expelled your species, we called you monsters. High Speaker Ulamus himself led the vote against you, and you came anyway. You lost thousands of your people saving ours. I do not understand. Tanaka was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. We did not come here for your politicians, Commander. We came for your children, for your families, for the ordinary people who never voted for anything except to live their lives in peace. Your government made choices. Your people should not die for them. She paused. That is the difference between us and the swarm. They see only enemies, we see people. The screen went dark. Pelax remained standing for a long time, watching human ships take up positions around his homeworld, watching them prepare to defend beings who had given them every reason to hate. And for the first time in his life, he wondered if everything he had believed about humanity was wrong. The Keithrani child weighed almost nothing in General Amara Diallo's arms. The colony of Keithra Minor had been occupied by the swarm for 3 weeks before the Liberation Force arrived. Most of the population had been consumed, but some had hidden, had survived in bunkers and caves and forgotten basements, waiting for rescue that most believed would never come. Amara had led the ground assault herself. 12 hours of fighting through streets covered in organic swarm material, clearing buildings one room at a time, calling out in every language her translator knew. And then, in the ruins of what had once been a school, she had found them. 47 children, alone. Their parents had sacrificed themselves to seal the bunker door. They had been hiding in darkness for 21 days, surviving on emergency rations and each other's warmth. The smallest one had reached for Amara the moment she opened the door. Without thinking, she had picked him up. Now she carried him through the ruined streets toward the evacuation shuttles, his small claws clinging to her armor, his insected eyes staring at her with something that looked like wonder. "You are human," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," Amara replied. "The adults said humans were bad. They said humans wanted to hurt us." Amara kept walking. Her soldiers formed a protective circle around the line of children, weapons ready, eyes scanning for any remaining swarm drones. "What do you think?" she asked. The child was quiet for a moment. "I think the adults were wrong." Amara smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in weeks. Across the galaxy, scenes like this repeated themselves. Human forces liberated occupied worlds. Human medics treated alien wounded. Human engineers rebuilt shattered infrastructure. And everywhere they went, they asked for nothing in return. Director Oren of the Keithrani could no longer pretend. He had chaired the vote that expelled humanity. He had allowed it to happen. And now he watched recordings of human soldiers carrying Keithrani children to safety, human doctors working around the clock to save Keithrani lives, human ships burning in defense of Keithrani colonies. He requested permission to visit Earth. President Sophia Reyes granted it without hesitation. Oren arrived on a gray morning in what humans called December. The sky was heavy with clouds that threatened rain. A cold wind swept across the landing platform where the president waited to greet him. Director Reyes said, "Welcome to Earth." Oren looked around. He had expected military displays, shows of power, reminders of humanity's strength. Instead, he saw ordinary buildings, ordinary people going about ordinary lives, children playing in a nearby park, an elderly human walking a small furry creature on a leash. "I expected something different," he admitted. "We are not what you imagined," Reyes replied. "Would you like to see more?" She took him to a hospital where alien refugees received care alongside human patients. She took him to a university where scientists from 3 species worked together on swarm countermeasures. She took him to a memorial being built for the Battle of Drethan Prime, where human and Drethani names were carved side by side. And then she took him to a small cafe and bought him a cup of coffee. "I do not understand," Oren said finally. "We rejected you. We humiliated you. Your own ambassador warned us that we would regret it, and we laughed at her. Why do you not hate us?" Reyes sipped her coffee. Because hate is heavy, Director. Carrying it everywhere you go is exhausting. We had a choice after the expulsion. We could become bitter or we could become better. We chose better. But the cost, the lives you have lost. Every life lost is a tragedy, but they died protecting innocent people. They died being exactly who they wanted to be. I cannot think of a more honorable way to go. Oren set down his cup. His compound eyes reflected the gray light from the window. The swarm was awakened by compact mining operations, he said quietly. Operations that humans argued against before your expulsion. We ignored you. We pushed into dark space because we were greedy, and now millions are dead because of our arrogance. I know, Reyes said. You know, and you have not told anyone. What would it accomplish? Would it bring back the dead? Would it defeat the swarm? Would it do anything except create blame and division when we need unity? Reyes shook her head. We are not interested in being right, Director. We are interested in surviving, all of us together. Oren was silent for a long time. I will recommend to the Assembly that Earth be reinstated immediately, he said finally. With a formal apology, with recognition of your sacrifices, with everything we should have given you from the beginning. We do not need recognition, Reyes replied. No, but we need to give it. We need to remember what we did and why it was wrong. Otherwise, we will make the same mistake again with some other species. We will fear what we do not understand and destroy it before it can prove us wrong. She smiled, then I accept. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. Outside, the clouds began to break. Sunlight fell across the city, warming the air, burning away the gray. Oren thought about everything he had seen. He thought about human soldiers dying for Keith Ronnie children. He thought about coffee and kindness, and a species that refused to become the monsters others accused them of being. And he thought about how terribly, tragically wrong the galaxy had been. 15 years ago, Diana Webb had walked into this chamber to witness humanity's exile. Today, she walked in to witness something else entirely. The Grand Assembly chamber looked the same. The floating platform still rose toward a ceiling lost in shadows. The translation system still hummed with 1,000 languages. Representatives of more than 1,200 species still filled every available space. But everything had changed. Diana took her position on Earth's platform, the same spot where she had stood on the worst day of her life. President Sophia Reyes stood beside her, calm and dignified in simple civilian clothes. They had been offered places of honor, elevated positions, special recognition. They had declined. We are not here to be above anyone, Reyes had said. We are here to be beside them. Director Oren rose at the central podium. His compound eyes swept across the chamber, pausing briefly on the human delegation. 15 years ago, he began, this assembly made a decision. We voted to expel Earth from the Galactic Compact. We did so out of fear, out of ignorance, out of the arrogance that comes from never being truly challenged. We believed we knew what humans were. We were wrong. The chamber was absolutely silent. Diana had never experienced such quiet in this space. In the years that followed, humanity did not attack us. They did not seek revenge. They did not close their borders and let us suffer the consequences of our choices. Instead, they waited. They watched. And when the greatest threat in galactic history emerged from dark space, they came to save us. Oren's voice cracked slightly. He paused, gathered himself, continued. The human confederacy has lost 47,000 soldiers defending species that expelled them. They have spent resources they could not afford to save worlds that rejected them. They have forgiven insults, healed old enemies, and asked nothing in return. Nothing. He looked directly at Diana. I present motion 12,847, the full reinstatement of Earth to the Galactic Compact, with formal recognition of their sacrifices and an official apology from this assembly. The vote took less than a minute. One by one, species cast their decision. The numbers climbed on the central display, and this time every single one was in favor. Final count, 1,246 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstaining. Diana blinked, 1 abstaining. She looked at the display and saw which delegation had chosen not to vote. Earth. Reyes smiled slightly. It seemed inappropriate to vote for ourselves. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Genuine laughter, warm and relieved. Diana felt tears on her face and did not bother to wipe them away. High Speaker Ulamis rose from the Drethani platform. He looked older than Diana remembered. His scales had lost their vibrant color. His movements were slow and careful, but his eyes were clear. He had prepared a long speech. Diana had seen the reports. Pages of carefully crafted apologies, historical analysis, diplomatic language designed to satisfy every political faction. He set the speech aside. "I was afraid of you," he said simply. "I led the vote to exile you because I was afraid. I told myself it was for the good of the galaxy, but the truth is much simpler. You were different. You were powerful, and instead of trying to understand you, I chose to destroy you." He stepped down from his platform, something that was never done in assembly proceedings. He walked across the chamber floor until he stood directly below Earth's delegation. "I am sorry," he said. "Not as High Speaker, not as a representative of the Drethani Consortium, as myself, as Ulamis, I was wrong and you suffered for my weakness. I am sorry." Diana looked at President Reyes. The older woman nodded slightly. Diana stepped to the edge of her platform and spoke clearly enough for the entire chamber to hear. "We accept your apology, Ulamis, not because we have forgotten what happened, but because holding on to anger would make us smaller than we want to be. We forgive you. We forgive all of you, and we are ready to build something better together." The chamber erupted in applause. Diana saw species that had never agreed on anything standing side by side, celebrating together. She saw old enemies embracing. She saw hope replacing fear in thousands of alien eyes. Later at the reception, Director Oren approached Reyes with an offer. "The Assembly would like to name you as Speaker," he said. "It is the highest honor we can give. You would lead the Compact, guide its future, shape galactic civilization for generations." Reyes shook her head. "I am honored, Director, but no, humanity does not need to lead. We just need to be part of things. Give the position to someone else, someone who will remember this moment and what it means." "And what does it mean?" "That even the deepest wounds can heal, that enemies can become allies, that fear does not have to be forever," Reyes smiled. "That kindness is stronger than hate even when it hurts." Across the station, Rena stood with her daughter, watching the celebrations through a window. The little Melori had been born during the war. She had grown up hearing stories of human soldiers and human kindness. "Mother," she asked, "what are humans?" Rena picked up her daughter and held her close. She thought about secret trades in the neutral zone. She thought about coffee and friendship. She thought about a species that had every reason to become monsters and chose to become heroes instead. "They are the ones who came back," she said. "When everyone else abandoned them, when the galaxy turned its back, they came back anyway. They came back to save us, and they will never let us forget what we can be." Her daughter smiled and waved at a passing human diplomat, who waved back. Outside the window, stars burned bright against the infinite dark. And humanity had finally come home.